Al 24, midnight news coming to you live from Algiers. And to the headlines. Algerian Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf hailed the great consensus positions of Algeria and Niger regarding regional, continental and international developments. Sudan's military accused the rapid support forces of shooting a Turkish evacuation plane on Friday, while the rebel paramilitary group denied the accusation. As it condemned once again the position of the Spanish Prime Minister regarding Western Sahara, the Spanish coordinator of Solidarity Associations emphasized the Spanish civil society will never abandon the Sahrawi people. Citing the Pentagon and US intelligence documents recently leaked via the internet, Ukrainian troops plan to launch a counter-offensive on the southern direction of the country next month. Hello again and welcome. I'm your host, Abdurrahim Kashur, and those were today's top stories. In his capacity as a special envoy of the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, the Minister of Foreign Affairs and National Community Abroad, Ahmed Attaf, handed in on Thursday a written message from the Algerian President to his Niger's counterpart, Mohamed Bazoum, as part of the working visit paid to the neighboring country. Mr. Attaf also conveyed the brotherly greetings of President Tebboune and his full commitment to continue working with him to implement the common ambition to strengthen historical ties between Algeria and Niger and build up an economic partnership that benefits both countries and the region as a whole.
Je suis venu au Niger en qualité
I have come to Niger in my capacity as Special Envoy of the President of the Republic, as I was entrusted with carrying a written message to President Mohamed Bazoum. The meeting was an opportunity to assess with Niger's President the level of cooperation between Algeria and Niger, and we tackled several dimensions of this cooperation.
Nombreuses dimensions de cette coopération.
Meanwhile, Algerian Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf hailed the great convergence in the positions of Algeria and Niger regarding regional, continental and international developments. The meeting allowed for highlighting the importance granted by the two presidents to the implementation of the solidarity programs for the benefit of the people of northern Niger, as well as economic cooperation projects. Efforts made by Algeria to remove the obstacles that hamper the implementation of the peace and reconciliation agreement in Mali stemming from Algeria's process were also emphasized.
Nous avons également échangé sur des problèmes.
We have also exchanged on political issues of common interest to both countries, notably the security situation in the Sahel region, which is, as we know, collapsing. There is also the situation in Mali and the implementation of the Peace and Reconciliation Agreement, to which both Algeria and Mali give great importance, and in our capacity also as parties in the international mediation. I think I can say that there is a great convergence of views on all these questions, and it is not surprising with regard to the cooperation and consultation relations between Niger and Algeria, and which are based mainly on trust and mutual understanding and consensus.
In the same line of thought, Algeria and Niger strengthening their military cooperation to confront security threats in the Sahel region. The Deputy Chief of Staff of Armed Forces of Niger, Ibrahim Issa Boulama, met with Major General Mohamed Ajroud in Tamanrasset to discuss ways to coordinating field operation between the two countries. Hussein Berkan.
In a meeting in Tamanrasset, southern Algeria, the Deputy Chief of Staff of the Armed Forces of the State of Niger, Ibrahim Issa Boulama, led a military delegation to meet with Commander of the 6th Military Region, Major General Mohamed Ajroud. The two officials discussed ways to confront security threats in the Sahel region and agreed to intensify field operational coordination by programming joint patrols along the entire border strip separating Algeria and Niger. Brigadier General Boulama emphasized the similarity of the visions and analysis of the leaderships of the two countries regarding current issues. in Niamey's willingness to strengthen the bonds of bilateral military cooperation with Algeria, with which it shares a land border of nearly 900 kilometers. Algeria has become an international leader in the fight against terrorism and is an important security asset for the region.
It was agreed on the need to intensify field operational coordination by programming joint patrols, separating Algeria and Niger.
Algeria's efforts to promote stability and prosperity in the region were highlighted by its foreign minister's recent tour to the countries of the region. The tour emphasized the expansions of development projects presented to the region, which is aligned with Algeria's economic vision for the Sahel region. The agreement to intensify field operational coordination between Algeria and Niger, as well as Algeria's focus on developmental economic vision, underscores the country's commitment to promoting stability and security in the Sahel region.
In a different matter now, an attack on military base in eastern Burkina Faso was launched by terrorists and has killed 33 soldiers and wounded 12 others in the latest explosion of violence in the West African country. The besieged soldiers killed at least 40 terrorists on Thursday before reinforcements arrived, according to the army statement. The assault took place Thursday in Gourama province town of Ougaro, according to an army statement also. Algeria firmly condemned on Friday the cowardly terrorist attack in Burkina Faso perpetrated against a military detachment of the army in the town of Ongaro, claiming its absolute will to fight against this scourge in all its forms, according to a press release from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and National Community Abroad. In Africa still, the Sudanese Doctors Union said Friday that at least 74 people were killed in 2 days of fighting that broke out in this week in the city of Al Janina in Sudan's Darfur. The union gave toll of 74 deaths in the city of Al Janina for Monday and Tuesday, adding it was still unable to confirm the number of people killed during the rest of the week as fighting raged in Sudan. The same line of thought, Turkish defense minister said on Friday that the damage caused to the military plane dispatched to Sudan for the evacuation of Turkish citizens was being inspected by the teams on the ground and expected to be repaired soon. Mohammed Khatou.
A couple of hours after the military aircraft from Port Sudan arrived in Istanbul, reports said Sudan's paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, RSF, shot at another Turkish evacuation plane as it was landing at Wadi Sayidna airport outside of Khartoum, damaging its fuel system. The RSF denied the allegation in a statement and stressed that its forces had remained strictly committed to the humanitarian truce that was agreed upon. And it is not true that they targeted any aircraft in the sky of Wadi Sayidna in Omdurman. Meanwhile, Turkey's defense minister Hulusi Akar affirmed that the plane had been fired at and said there were neither injuries nor casualties. He added that there is minor damage caused to the plane and the team is investigating it. Akar also said that 5 military aircrafts had been dispatched to Sudan to evacuate all remaining citizens.
As part of our evacuation plan to our citizens, one of our C-130 aircraft landed at Wadi Sayidna Airport, 25 kilometers north of Khartoum. There was probably a small gunfire during the descent of our second plane. Despite this, our plane landed safely. We do not have any injuries or staff casualties. There is minor damage to the plane, and our team is investigating it at the moment.
It's worth noting that hundreds of people have so far died and tens of thousands have fled the country in 2 weeks of conflict between the Sudanese army and the rival RSF.
Still in the African continent, the United Nations and NGOs CARE and Oxfam revealed that hunger is worsening dramatically in Africa, noting that a person dies of hunger every 36 seconds between Ethiopia, Kenya and Somalia, while 18.6 million people suffer from severe food insecurity in the Sahel region.
More than a third of population in Somalia is expected to face a food crisis between April and June, with expectations of famine. Funding needs are huge. Major Western donors must change the size of this funding and coordinate among themselves. Today, we're facing the worst food and humanitarian crisis since World War II.
Algerian Minister of Knowledge, Economy, Startups and Microenterprises Yassine Al-Mahdi Walid affirmed Algeria's commitment to strengthening African cooperation in the field of innovation, digitization and communication. Al-Mahdi Walid's statement came during his participation as a representative of the Algerian President Abdelmajid Tebboune in the proceedings of the 6th Transform Africa Summit held in Zimbabwe.
Africa is among the most difficult places to implement projects, such as the project of connecting African countries with optic fiber lines due to the high temperatures that can sometimes reach 60 degrees Celsius. There is a project stretching over 4,500 kilometers from Algiers to Abuja, and I'm happy that my country has completed its section of the project, which constitutes 2,500 kilometers, and things are going smoothly in the other countries concerned with the project. And this proves the political will to generalize the projects of optic fibers in all remote areas of the African continent.
Brigadier General of the Tunisian National Guard Hussam Eddin Jbabli said that the Coast Guard forces have recovered 41 bodies during the past 2 days, with an increase in the number of sinking of migrants' boats sailing toward the Italian coast. Al-Jbabli added that the number of corpses recovered during the past 10 days rose to 210, which is an unprecedented number, as he put it. The head of the United Nations Support Mission in Libya, Abdullah Batili, welcomed the patriotic spirit of the 5+5 Joint Military Committee, calling on the political parties in Libya to follow suit. Batili said on Twitter that the military units and security formations committed themselves during the meetings supervised by the United Nations in March and April to support the elections, the safe return of displaced, the release of detainees, and the addressing the issue of missing. In the Middle East now, the violence of Zionist forces doesn't seem to stop. Another time, the occupation forces shot dead on Friday a 16-year-old Palestinian teenager. This happened during the confrontations that erupted in the village of Tuku to the southeast of the southern West Bank district of Beit Lahm. According to local sources, occupation soldiers fired live bullets, tear gas, canisters and stun grenades at the village residents, shooting and critically injuring a teenager in the chest. In Europe now, the Spanish Coordination of Solidarity Association with Western Sahara emphasized that civil society in Spain will never abandon the Sahrawi people, as it once again condemned the position of the Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez regarding Western Sahara.
In an open letter addressed to Pedro Sánchez, the Spanish Coordination of Solidarity Associations with Western Sahara affirmed that relations with Morocco cannot be built at the expense of the legitimate right of the Sahrawi people to self-determination and independence. In this context, the Assembly condemned the unexpected and unilateral change of the Spanish Prime Minister on March 14, 2022 regarding Western Sahara, noting that this measure led to undermining a historic consensus in Parliament.
Relations with Morocco cannot be built at the expense of the legitimate right of the Sahrawi people to self-determination and independence. Spanish civil society will never abandon the Sahrawi people and will not betray or pass economic benefits at the expense of their rights.
Spanish civil society has taken to the streets many times in support for the Sahrawis' right to self-determination and independence, condemning Sanchez's submission to the Moroccan occupation. Spanish politicians also protested several times against the harmful position of Pedro Sanchez in Western Sahara, calling it a betrayal of the Sahrawi people. They repeatedly called on the Prime Minister to back down from an agreement that generated disappointment and has triggered widespread outrage across the country, including from coalition partners.
France's economy is facing great difficulties due to the repercussions of the war in Ukraine and the continuation of labor strikes in the protests against the amendments to the pension system. This caused the French GPD to drop by 0.3% and food prices increased by 14.9% on an annual basis. Russian President Vladimir Putin said on Friday that Russia was not going to follow the rules of former partners. Mr. Putin added that the West is seeking to impose its rules on everyone. This comes amid heightened tensions between Russia and Western countries over the Russian special operations in Ukraine.
Our partners, or one might say former partners in some countries, maniacally destroy the legal framework and channels of dialogue and are trying to impose their views and so-called rules on everyone. What are the rules? I have already said many times that no one saw them. Who wrote those rules? Apparently they write their rules under the covers and they themselves do something with them under the covers. But we will not lay under their covers. We are not going to follow their rules either.
In the same line of thoughts, the Russian president noted that forecasts by international organizations about his country's economy have to show a stable growth.
Look at the forecasts of the international organizations. Forecasts about the growth of the Russian economy. Everything is more or less stable in our country. Even those who would not want to show these prospects are forced to show it. And look at those who create problems for us. They apparently create them for themselves.
In the same line of thought, several airstrikes have fallen on cities across Ukraine, including Kiev. The deadly incidents have left at least 25 people dead. Nabil Khazini, more in this story.
It was a hard day in Ukraine. A wave of airstrikes has fallen on several cities across the country, including the capital, Kiev. In total, at least 25 people were killed. Moscow denies targeting Ukrainian civilians and stated that the aim of the strikes was to prevent Ukraine from bringing backup troops to the front rows of the fighting.
This proves once again that you cannot stop terror. Only with weaponry, air defenses, modern aviation, without which air defenses cannot be fully effective. Artillery, armored vehicles.
The Russian Defense Ministry said its military had targeted Ukrainian army reserve units with the strikes. It stated that its rocket strikes against Ukrainian army reserve units were intended to prevent it from reaching the front lines of the battles as Kiev approached the start of its counterattack to restore what Russian forces had held since the end of February 2022. Kiev said its large counterattack aims to reserve the war and restore about 20% of its territory, which was controlled by Russian forces, including Crimea. These last attacks come at a time when Kiev says the stage of preparation for its large-scale counterattack is nearing its end. For this part, Russian Defense Ministry Sergei Shoigu said Moscow was strengthening combat readiness at its Central Asian military bases to counter what he said were U.S. efforts to strengthen its presence in the region.
The United States of America and its allies, under the pretext of helping in the fight against terrorism, are trying to restore their military presence in Central Asia. We regard requests to the countries of the region to deploy military infrastructure as a direct threat to stability in the space of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. For our part, we are increasing the combat readiness of Russian military bases in Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan, as well as other response forces to possible challenges.
Mr. Shoigu said the US are trying to restore their military presence in Central Asia and that Russia regards requests to deploy military infrastructure in the countries of the region as a direct threat to the stability in the area.
Iran's top diplomat said on Friday that the agreement between his country and Saudi Arabia would have a positive effects in the region in general. Speaking at a news conference at the Iranian embassy in Beirut, Iranian Foreign Minister Hussein Amir Abdullahian said that embassies in Tehran and Riyadh would be reopened within a few days, adding that he had invited his Saudi counterpart to visit Iran and that he had welcomed the invitation.
During that latest telephone call that took place on the day of Eid al-Fitr between the foreign ministers of the Islamic Republic of Iran and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, we agreed to work within coming few days on reopening of Iranian and Saudi embassies and consulates in Tehran and Riyadh.
Secretary of the Security Council of Armenia stated that his country will hold talks in the near future with Azerbaijan regarding a peace agreement in order to settle the long-standing differences between the two countries. Russian news agency TASS, in turn, reported that the Armenian Minister of Defense discussed with the new commander of the Russian peacekeeping forces in the region the situation in Nagorno-Karabakh region, which was cause of two wars between the two countries in the past 3 decades. Ending up with the sports, Algerian national team head coach for the under-17 Arzaki Roman affirmed that his players are well prepared for the opening game against Somalia in the under-17 Afghan competition, which will kick off today, Saturday, here in Algiers. During the press conference, Algerian coach stated that the opening games in various competitions are usually difficult for the host country. It's worth mentioning that the Algerian national team is in Group A alongside with Congo and Senegal, as well as Somalia, which the Desert Warriors are going to face today evening 8 p.m. local time at Nelson Mandela Stadium in Barraqi.
We have witnessed so many difficult opening games, especially for the host team that organizes the tournament, not in the field but rather mentally. Of course, there is extra pressure put on the players regardless of other games beyond the opening ones. After taking part in the last Arab Cup 7 months ago, we have gained some experience that allow us to deal with such intense games without taking into consideration the opponent's team name. Always the first game is really important at any level in the group stage.
Wishing the best for our national football team to be crowned at the end of this tournament. To this end, ladies and gentlemen, thank you ever so much for this staying with us in this late hour. For more updates, you cover our social media platform. And all I can say at the end, take care of yourself. Good night.